All right, we are live. And so, welcome, Richard. This is our super fun live stream where we go into all the new stuff that Uniform just released. And so, maybe let's get started by who you are, what you do, and what we'll do in the stream.
Hey Tim, yeah, thanks for having me in the show. Really looking forward to nerding out for an hour. So, what we recently released, like on Tuesday, was like a lot of new capabilities for our Mesh framework, which is our integration framework for Uniform that I think
Exactly.
is really a game changer. So this really empowers like the business users to compose content coming out of multiple sources, but also the developer to kind of remove all of that glue code and just kind of connect your design system components with external data. And so I'm really looking forward to jump into the session where we build some fun stuff.
And, I actually kind of say this is, oh, our good friend Booba is here. What's up,
Hey, hi,
dude?
Bua.
What I wanted to say is actually, and this is a little bit bold, but I think this is what Headless promised, but didn't deliver on for many years
Yeah,
because it was still
exactly.
growing. And we now started this company and looking at the space and like, okay, what do we actually need to make everybody happy rather than just developers? And
Yeah,
I
and I think
think
like, yeah,
yeah, we're getting there now. And
we're
right, this is
getting
the
there.
promise of what Headless was supposed to be. I know it's a bold thing to say, but watch us try and then judge again, right?
Yeah, and I think
So
like when Headless came out, like the big promise was like that you can structure your content, break up everything into reusable pieces. But I think like what was really missing on the story was like nobody told you how to put them together again. And like this whole assembly
exactly.
piece, that's really hard. So I think like yeah, like you said, like we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, and the interesting bit here is that Khaled, our lovely
They
colleague,
call
is
it.
in the stream. Um, we tend to just put things on different places in these headless spaces, and then somehow think, okay, but we have this whole design thing, all these design components that we built. How do we put those into these systems? And essentially, a headless CMS should be relatively simple. You model your
Yeah.
core data, and that's it. But now people started to model all their design stuff in it, right? And that just
Yeah.
becomes a little messy sometimes. And I guess, Richard, you have a bunch of opinions there, right? Because where you worked
Yeah.
before, that happened a lot, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit about my background. Like I used to work at agency, so I was very, very early adopter of headless technologies. And then I worked at a well-known headless CMS provider and kind of responsible for content modeling. So I've been seeing quite a lot what people, how they are using content models or how they're using headless CMS. And so for me, it was always very clear that what goes into a headless CMS should be content that is very channel display agnostic. It should be what I call like often like stable content or strategic content. Like that's your
Yeah.
blog post, your case studies if you're an agency, your events, basically something that can take many different forms, that can be shown on many different channels. And then you have this other kind of content that is like this assembly kind of content or the compositional content that is more related to how do I structure a page? How do I lay out a page? How do I maybe also select which content I want to feature? So it's not this kind of pure content, but it's more content that's very specific to the concrete channel. And so what I've been seeing is like a lot of people, and you need both. Like I think that that's the key piece here. Like you need to have like a solution that can support both. And if you don't have these two kinds of content, like the result is a developer is hard coding all of that layout and assembly information
Exactly.
in their code. And so this empowers the business user or the marketer because basically they have to go knocking at the developer's desk and saying, hey, I want to update that hero. I want to have that maybe use a different style. And
Exactly.
also at the same time, I also see this whole trend of design systems and componentizing everything, like probably also very driven by the more modern JavaScript frameworks like
Yeah.
React and Vue and so on. So
It's all
content
component
develop,
first now, right?
yeah, exactly. And so everyone is kind of starting to break down their designs into reusable components. And now you have to find a way how to actually take that content, put that into my components and make it very easy for the developer to create this kind of mapping between your content and your components. but also how can I expose this to the business user so that they can actually work in a creative way, assemble pages, but within the constraint of the design system. So basically, what a designer and the developer has defined what business user or marketer should be using, so that brand consistency is in place, that accessibility is the works, that
Exactly.
performance is there. Because front end, in my opinion, is an art. It takes a lot of kind of polish and time to get it right. And so to be able to have a non-technical user build pages, it needs a lot of preparation and needs a lot of thought that you can do that.
Exactly. And so this is a lovely way to set our context for today. And we will take it even a little bit further because just having this front end in place to know how these components map, that's point one, right? We need to have good quality. But
Yeah,
later on, we need to also connect stuff to it without having too much change in your code base. We actually want to have freedom around that. And so, with that in mind, we have released a few things. And so, I don't have a slide for this because the idea is that we just chat and show you stuff. So we're going to show you stuff soon. So what we have released first and foremost is a component starter kit. And I know if you use Tailwind or any of these other lovely systems like Kickstart DS or something like that, you will know what your components are. You can grab them and put them in uniform and just use them, right? But that's not everybody. And actually, to show this stuff off, you kind of just want to have a lovely place to start. And so we have come up with a component starter kit that we think works really, really well. So that's number one. And then number two, we're also thinking about how do we actually connect stuff to these components from external sources. And so you need to find a way to add data sources and data types and things like that to your system and then connect that specifically to your component. So we've built that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but that was what we like to call the uniform mesh, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a few things around what mesh does and how we can shape how components feel within that we're going to show you today. There's a whole bunch of different amazing things you can do. And then on the third axis, that's a little bit more for the developers amongst us, is that actually when you have selected all these data sources you want and you put them all to your components, you have your whole design and you hit save, all of that is specifically sent to the CDN edge where we cache it. So you could have a runtime app that's SSR essentially calling our CDN with 15 CMSs connected, and it's still within 50 milliseconds, which is
Exactly.
ridiculous. And then the hardest part there is, of course, hey, how do I change the cache if something else changes, right? If an external source has an update, how does that work? And we have very fine-grained systems for that in place. So you can always just connect to exactly what you want, and then per field it's cached. And so that's a lot that I just talked about.
Yeah.
Before we start showing stuff, Richard, do you want to maybe shine some light on some of these things, or do we just, share the screen and rock and roll?
I think like you covered a lot. I think but like the one thing that you said, like that you might have like these 15 APIs that you might need to kind of call it, let's say when you're in your homepage. I think like that's also one of these really key missing pieces that has been kind of missing in the composable world, and because it's not just like that you are able to pull in the data, but you have to do it in a very performant way. And so
Exactly.
people have been building backends for frontends, so-called BFFs, for a long
Exactly.
time. But this is like a lot of complexity that you kind of put on your own shoulders, something that you have to
Exactly.
maintain. And so I think what I really love about our new solution is like how simple this becomes. Like you don't need this kind of backend for front end, and that is like as you'll see later, within a couple of steps you can connect to those multiple API sources, but with performance out of the box. And that makes me really
Exactly.
excited.
And how I love to say it is like we're not data federation, we're not a CMS, we're not a BFF or backend for front end. We're a mix between all of them, but then agnostic to whatever you want to throw at it. So the vendor
Yeah,
lock-in is essentially zero. Well,
yeah,
there's a little bit, but that's kind of normal, I guess. You need to be
yeah,
able to connect our SDK, for example, but that's about it.
Yeah,
So
and I think like also sorry, Tim. I think
yeah,
like
go on.
one big change from our previous version of a mesh framework was like we had a little bit of a coupling of your external integrations into your components. And so one thing I'm now really excited about is like your front-end components can, like if you want to, can completely stay agnostic of uniform. They might not even know uniform. They might not even know what systems you're connecting to because as any kind of typical front-end component, you just have props that are defined that you need for rendering, and then you just kind of pass in those values into those props.
So exactly, and so we just got a lovely, very complicated question, and I'm going to leave that one for you, Richard. I know there's a bunch of stuff around that. Do you know the exact answer, or do we ask one of our colleagues to jump in here?
I can give it a try. So what we'll show later, we're creating so-called data types. And a data type is more or less like an API call or definition of an API call. And for each of those data types, you can basically define cache purge keys. And so if you, let's say, have a data type that's connecting to a counterflow blog post content type, for example, then we allow you to manually clear out that cache if let's say like something changes in counter for you would maybe send a webhook and you can then on your webhook handler clear that cache for that data type and
Yeah,
so
or we
that
have
really gives
settings,
you
right?
like a
We
sorry
also have settings to say, okay,
yeah we
we
have
validate this thing every 10 seconds or every minute or
yeah
whatever.
so we have like a time to live kind of basic cache setting but if you really need to go nerdy and really want to be in full control and make sure that you
Yeah.
never have stale content then you can add this kind of advanced settings.
I wonder, do we just jump into that, or do we first, you know what? I think we should first just go over what you see here on the screen, what we
Yeah,
have here in uniform, and then we will get to that part with this data types and this caching and the
I,
cache
yeah,
purging, things like that. So
yep.
um, I think these are all the compositions we've made. Um, what I think we should start with is the core of what Uniform likes to show, which is how we kind of visually edit everything. And so all of this is kind of agnostic. So if I wanted to add, let's say, to this hero here, I can click on this, right? Um, right now, these are all kind of local. We just typed it in
Mhm.
here. But you can also add, like, let's say, a contentful hero to this or something else or whatever list that we want to use. And that is actually something that is used to be very complicated because let's say you want to do inline editing like this and you have 3 or 4 different CMSs. Do you then implement all of their SDKs? That's kind of silly, right? You just want one thing, which is this. And
Yeah,
what's really fun about the latest releases, like if this stuff, because Uniform has micro CMS capabilities for stuff like layouting or certain titles, like browse the components, for example, this thing, you might want to say, this stuff. You can actually literally type that in here. And the idea is that this stuff doesn't live in a CMS on its own because it might not actually make sense to have just a string somewhere. So that stuff you can all put in uniform. Or the fact that this header 1 might have to be a header 2 or header 3. It has no sense to do that in a CMS because it
yeah,
changes based on where this component lives. So it's context based to your design, which is what we see here. So this is actually our starter kit with all these different content blocks, titles. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's like a lot going on here. And this should be enough to get you going quite fast. And we've had some customers using this, and they had like their first landing page to show to their boss in like 2 hours, which is pretty ridiculous.
yeah. And I think like for agencies, that might be a really big game changer because like often you have like this very long and tedious CMS selection process. And so kind of getting to a workable prototype with real website that hopefully, first of all, the components that we provide kind of also kind of solve a lot of those typical use cases, but also it allows you to work in code. So you can really show super early how to a customer or potential customer what they will be getting. And you don't have to sell pictures of some Figma files, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, as I've been an agency person for a long, long time, and if you're able to change the game by literally saying, you know what, just going to build in the stuff that's already production ready, later on choose some stuff about CMSs or data sources, your front enders can build real things and literally just type them in here like that. And then your QA can actually QA the real stuff. Because if you look at, let's say, this hero component here, right? This is the hero type. We can actually we can actually edit that definition here. And if we do that, you see there's a whole bunch of properties here, right? Eyebrow text, title style, description, image, all this stuff. These things are actually the same properties that you have in your React file or your Vue file. If we actually look at it, let's go to card block, let's find hero. See, these are the component props for this component specifically. And uniform from our SDK actually gives you some lovely typing, which always helps, right? But then you have all these props here, and they're just used throughout. There's a whole bunch of things. There's not that much uniform in here. The connection to that hero isn't there. There's literally just, this is the hero that's rendered by the uniform SDK. And so there's one real hard connection point to the uniform SDK, which is here in the page. We actually have the uniform composition component, which actually gets this composition data. But that's about it. And that helps a lot by keeping this very loosely connected, right? Because if we now go back here and say we want to connect to something external, you can kind of just connect whatever you want to these different properties, and then the code stays identical because whatever comes out of uniform then only changes its data, but the rest is the same. So we can actually see at the Vue source here. Let's see if we find this hero here. So you see all these properties, they are already set up. And when we add an external source like Contentful, which we can do in a second, this just changes with the different copy, but the props, they stay the same and the code stays the same. Does it make sense when I explain it like that, Richard?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like one extra point to call out here is like you showed here, you're delivering exactly the payload like you need. So I've been joking internally that where I kind of said like this is like a marketing user-driven GraphQL query because basically by
Yes.
placing by placing all of the components on the page and assembling that page, they are really kind of saying like what data do I exactly need. And so one of the big
Yeah,
issues like when you kind of connect to these multi-source kind of websites where you need to make 10, 15 API calls is you usually do a lot of overfetching. You get probably a megabyte, or it could be that you get a megabyte of JSON data where you might only need
exactly. I've been
10K,
around that
10
for, yeah.
kilobyte of data. And again, that's where you might need build your kind of backend for front end to again make it that performant. And here you just basically get exactly the data that you need. So what you see on your surface, like that, exactly that data, that's what you're getting when you're calling the data from Uniform.
Exactly. And so I love that GraphQL thing that you just mentioned because this is very much REST right now. You can add
Yeah,
GraphQL sources to this, by the way, but
you
that's for
can.
later.
Yeah.
Interestingly, let's say I want to put this one on the top here. I literally just move it like that and it happens directly. When I hit save now and look at whatever is now sent to the browser, and you say view source. Actually, now it's the call to action component that's first. And then the hero comes second. So what our SDK does is literally just look at, okay, what type of component is this? Let me just get the parameters and then render that component with whatever that parameters are. Right? And then there's different things. We can have different variations. There's all this kind of lovely stuff that helps you with your, I call it design system. It's not fully design system. It's just more your design components, essentially.
Your component library.
Yes. So I haven't looked at my screen here because I'm just seeing this thing. Do we have any comments? Just give
No
me a sec.
comments so
Oh, yeah,
far.
we do. Whoa, that's a long one from Riyajat. Oh. I don't think this is what we need.
Nope, not really.
Okay, so I just removed that one. Welcome for look, the fact that you get spammers in your stream means people watch it. I love it. Anyways, okay, we're going to go back. And how about we add a data type to this thing
Yeah,
from an existing integration that we have? Let's say Contentful.
let's do that.
All right. So what you want to do is actually add a data type, and that data type you can then later add on to either this composition and you just use it anywhere, or you can make a different pattern of this component and assign the data there. So before we do all that, let's not save it and actually add a data type. And currently we're completely empty, and we purposely didn't prepare anything. We're just going to do it together now while on the stream to show you how fast this can be. So, oh wait, what I want, of course, is let's start with a data type that's actually based on an integration that we have in Uniform. So let's go to integration. So you can see we have a ton of stuff here. There's a few that I made myself. So you can also do that if you want. That's not for this stream, but if you wanted to make your own integration that becomes a very easy to use data type, you can. So let's go to content and go for contentful. And so that's it. So now Uniform knows about contentful and the fact that it has data types. And actually setting up how to connect to contentful, we do actually while creating a data source to add a type on top later, because you can literally add any space, any user account, whatever you want. So you can do multiple different ones. So you can see before we make a type, so a data type would be heroes or blog posts or whatever, and then they're all coming from a source, and that's what we're adding here. So first it is source, and now in contentful it actually needs your space ID and all the things to connect here. So let's do that.
Yeah. And while you're looking that
Yeah,
up,
feel
like
free
I can
to
talk a
fill the space
little
there.
bit more about the content source. So like the purpose of the content source is like to be your API based URL, your access credentials. And so as you've seen, like what Tim did in the previous screen, we for Contentful, we have like a preset set of fields, like you need to know like the space ID, the API key, and potentially the environment. And all of those kind of access credentials are for a data source are also stored by us because we're going to use them on the edge, but they're stored in an encrypted way. So they will never be exposed to anyone outside of this kind of screen. And so we are using those credentials to do those API calls on your behalf. But again, very important, like in the data source, they are stored in an encrypted way. So you don't have to worry about giving us some of your credentials.
So what I just did is I just logged into Contentful with my own personal account with my GitHub connection. So I called it Contentful Tim because we can also add another one later. And then here we have an archetype of the type of the data that we want to get. So we can actually get images from Contentful if we wanted to, or we can query and search a result inside of certain things, or get a single entry, or personally select 4 of them. So let's go for single entry here. And oh, that's interesting. I've seen this before. I think I might need to refresh my page. What do you think?
Yeah, just hit save now for now, see if that works. Oh yeah, refresh it. Maybe that's an issue.
Welcome to the art of live stream. This is part of the game. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Perfect. So I think I'm just gonna connect. Let's fill out that hero, and I have some hero content inside. I'm seeing some very interesting things here. I've not seen this one before. It's pretty cool. Richard, can you explain a little bit what this one is?
Oh, this allows you to just pass in some custom query parameters in your data type.
Oh,
Tim,
cool.
I have. Okay, your audio was gone for me for a second. I'm not sure
Oh,
if that
sorry
was
about
also
that.
for
Are we
everyone
back?
else. Yeah, now I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Apologies. So if you wanted to do some custom queries inside whatever query you do into Contentful, you can actually type these in here. Like the
Can
things you
type this
might...
in here.
Yeah, exactly. And you can actually go to the Contentful docs where they completely explain all of that. However, I'm not going to do that now. The thing that a lot of people do is the include property in Contentful, so you can actually find your edges and the deeper things. Let's do that. And I'm going to add the title field to be able to search through. So let's call this hero. And let's save and test and see what comes out. So we've now connected to these heroes. And let's just grab, this one, for example, and fetch the data. And so you can actually see what comes back. And here in the fields, you have the chapeau, which is basically, in French, it's called hat. So it's on top of the title, subtitle, description, and another Boolean. Interestingly, I've decided not to have images in Contentful in my instance. So let's see how that fits our hero for later. And if that doesn't actually fit well, we can also just, if we wanted to, maybe we can do that already. Let's just add another one from Contentful. But now let's add another space, because why not?
Yeah.
And I'm doing this on purpose because I know so many people that actually need to have multiple contentful spaces, and it's so challenging to actually make all that work in configuration. And you'll see we're not writing any code anytime soon here. So let's now just grab this one. Oh, no, I need this one. Go. We're going to go for another entry, and we're going to go to the CTA here.
Okay. Tim, I think your mic has some issues again. At least I hear you a
Again,
little bit. Yes.
I'm sorry about that. Are we back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm doing the same things, and this is a hero from uniform. Oh no, this is a call to action. So let's test this one. So we're adding a whole bunch of data stuff here, and you can see, okay, so this one actually has images, you see? Okay, so we can actually fetch and see all the data that comes back. All right, so we've added 2 different contentful instances with CTAs and heroes. So now let's just bind that to anything on the homepage. Let's go to the home. And so we're going to start the easiest way, which is literally just, I kind of want to connect this title to the title from my own instance. So what I could do is actually just hit this little icon here and say, well, let's do the contentful hero from Tim. Now select the Tim Benniks one, and then find my title, connect. And this is now, as you can see, I can no longer edit it because this is dynamically coming from Contentful. Let's do the description. I have a description here. And I also have an eyebrow text, because in my case, it's called chapeau. And so now suddenly this thing, when we hit save, and I'll just hit publish as well, just because why not? This is now connected to Contentful, but my code hasn't changed one bit. So when we actually see what comes out here and view the source, well, let's move this one below again, so it's a little bit cleaner. View the source. And then here you can see the values now. Hey, I am Tim, or at least here. Let's see, where's my title? Tim Benniks, my subtitle,
Yeah.
and I have my. So all these things, literally, it just changed here. So when I actually just go to my local host that is currently running, this is now coming from Contentful, cached on the edge. That's why this is a ridiculously fast loading page, because it's just cached. Like the only thing you see change when I hit refresh is just the font loading. And so this now came from Contentful, but we can actually change this one, for example, to another here or another thing in Contentful, right? This one could be, we wanted to actually come from the CTA, from another Contentful space. So let's grab this one. Oh. And you know what? We can go totally crazy. Actually, this field we can take from my first space if we wanted to. Like, it doesn't really matter anymore. These just become data items. And now this one is also dynamic. So when I hit save and I go to my local host here, this is all dynamic.
Exactly. And so what you just showed, like by hitting this kind of downward arrow, like you're creating what we call data connection. And so under the
Exactly.
hood, what this really means is like we just store a pointer to like this external entity, to that field or that parameter of that external entity, which then is resolved on the edge when you kind of fetch the composition. And this is what we
Exactly.
call edge hancing. Because like
Yes.
before
And
we had a, yeah, good.
this is what that looks like. When you view the source initially, what is stored, this is what's really pretty interesting, right? So the hero here that is connected to a Contentful ID is actually, this is the ID in Contentful. And for our next CTA component, this is the ID in Contentful. And so this is what's stored in Uniform. And then when it's rendered on the page, what the edge does, we enhance this. And that means I'm enhancing from this ID to actually just fill it out with all the things that we need specifically for this component. So when you go to the edge enhanced version, then you suddenly see, okay, I have some parameters for image, title, description, title, style. And so we're enhancing from just the ID to whatever this needs to be. And that happens on the edge. And so we can, if I hit, okay, it's saved. So I can just have a little look here. And then you can actually go to advanced options. And here you can kind of say, okay, this is allowed to only specific components I've set up in Uniform. But also you can have a look at the cache time, or do we need it on the edge at all? Maybe not. And there's some regenerate key to purge the cache for if you have a webhook, for example. So you can actually change exactly when you want this to do, or when you want to purge exactly this little data type. So you could say, I'm going to change something in Contentful. I had a webhook. I fired with this key, and then it's purged. Or you just wait for 30 seconds and it's purged. Or you set this longer. You can kind of choose yourself.
Yeah. So like the time-based one is like the simple variant where you don't have to code anything at all. But if you really
Exactly.
want
I
to
tend
kind
to
of
like that
go
one.
deep, yeah, I've never used a cache purging myself
Same
so
here.
far.
Never has been needed. And also what's interesting, if you would combine this later on when you're ready for next server components, for example, or React server components, they also do stuff like that. So if you combine both, you probably don't need the cache purging at all. So we've now added two integration type data types, but I also want to add a custom one, because you can literally just add any URL to this, right? You can actually do an HTTP request if you want to. And I'm going to add an API that I built for my own website that queries the platform that I write my blog posts on. So you get 4 or 5 blog posts or 10 based on my username. And I made that myself because I wanted very specific fields and a certain few fun things. And so once I've added that in, we can actually look at how would I render 5 items that come back rather than just the one thing. So that's another fancy thing here. So
Sounds
I've
good.
made this.
Tim, before you jump in, we have a comment, a question that we might want to answer before. That's still cache related before we dive in
Oh, yeah,
to
yeah,
the other
that's
topic.
important.
So does it refresh behind the scenes, preventing clients from getting cold cache hit? So we have multiple options by default. Like if the cache is expired, the first hit would get a cold cache hit. But
Yes.
for enterprise customers, we have an advanced potential feature that we're experimenting with that you could kind of also buy for an additional cost.
Yeah, and there's a few options you can do this with, right? Like if you wanted to, if you have like a lot of static data, for example, you can just do maybe more like an SSG approach. So
Yeah,
then when you build your website, it will just invalidate all the things because it hits it cold, and then it just renders
exactly.
your pages and caches it in for Cell or Netlify. That's another approach you could do, but of course that also means much more build time and other things. So there's always a lot of moving parts in this
Yeah.
stuff.
And there's also stuff like incremental static regeneration and so on that will
Exactly.
also maybe help you to kind of avoid this kind of cold cache hit.
All right. So what I'm adding here is the base URL for my API. And if you had any sort of query parameters needed for authentication or headers that you had to add, like bearer token, all that stuff, you can do that here. Right now, this API is open, so I won't have to do that. Because what I can do now is I have my base. This is my source, timbenniks.dev/API. Now I can add a few different types on it if I wanted to. For example, my articles or my conference talks or my live streams, whatever. So for now, let's go to articles, and it's a get. That's all I need because we're getting my articles. And there's a few different variables that I need to be able to query this. So the first one is actually my username. I would have hard coded this, but maybe I want to show blog posts for my friends on my site. So that's why I didn't hard code it. So, but I do add a default value because in this case, I don't have to add the Benniks every time. And then there's another one, how many I want to see per page. And let's say we're going to do 3. And I also add this by default, but you don't have to. So we've now added 2 variables, but they need to be added to the query parameters, right? And these names can differ. They can be whatever you want. But actually, I want my username. And what you can do here is actually select username. And you see it becomes this variable. But you can do pretty cool things. You could actually, if you wanted to, concatenate this stuff. You don't need to do that now, but this gives you a lot of flexibility. Now, we're in the nerdy weeds now. I really enjoy this stuff.
Yeah.
All right, so what we have built now is this. It already says Tim Benniks and 3 because those were my default variables. So we can actually hit save and test, and let's go and see what it fetches for us. And so it returns a result, and these are my 3 latest blog posts. And I could also go to my blog publication platform and do the same thing, but I wanted to have these nice fields. So I've done it this way myself. And so if you have any sort of legacy API or any sort of microservice that you have created, you can just add it here and just connect it as anything else. Right.
Yeah.
So now that we have that, let's go back to the homepage. And actually, now that we have 3 of those, we need to kind of render a list of items, right? So let's do that now. If you scroll down, there's this lovely component. Why don't we just call this latest articles? Oh. Interestingly, I don't need these actually. This stuff, like latest articles, this you store in uniform because this might be completely volatile. You might change this next week to call it best articles or whatever, right? So this is something you store in uniform, but your articles themselves are something is portable, right? You can use it in all your projects. That's what's stored outside. And so you can see we have these 3 lovely grid items here. So what we want to do right now, these are actually kind of hard-coded in a uniform micro CMS here. But actually, let's keep them in. But what I want to do is loop over the data that we just set up and show that off. So I'll leave them in. And actually, what we're going to add is the following. We have a lovely component called loop. And this is a component created by Uniform. And so what you can do is you can actually select the output of your API to that loop. Right? And so let's add a new data thing to this composition. And these are my articles. And you can say per page, well, we wanted 3, right? And we have my username. Okay. So we've now added this as a data resource to the page. And what we want...
Tim, sorry, quickly also to interrupt. So maybe when you go back to the screen where you kind of configured it, you also see like all of the variables that you defined in your data type, they are immediately available for editing. So this is something that our HTTP request data type brings you out of the box. So if you have any kind of dynamic variables, we provide you the out of the box UI. And then
maybe
if
I
you
can
want
go
to
back
have
and show you.
Yeah.
I can probably disconnect and connect it again. So you want me to make a new one?
Yeah. Add a new one.
So what did you want to show?
Like this, so this per page, this and username, those were these 2 variables that Tim created before.
I can just go for 5 now and change it here, right?
Yeah. And so by defining the variables, those are immediately editable. If you then maybe would like to have, a nicer UI for your editors in the future, then you can use a custom mesh framework to build out your own UI, where we also have design system components that make it easier. So if you remember when we looked at Contafo, where you had this nice entity selector, all of that is provided for you, and you basically just have to connect your API URLs to get that editing experience.
Yeah. So we don't have time in this stream to show you that, but what you can do potentially is just make your own integration into Uniform and use our little SDK and design system to make this whole experience a lot smoother. But if you just do HTTP, you can just do it like this and it also works. Yeah. So what we need for this list is select this result. So it now can loop over 3 things. And now where the magic starts is that loop understands now that there are 3 items, right? So now I can actually add a cart. And you can see it knows there are 3 things. We just haven't selected anything. So what we can do is actually now we can connect this title to the title of whatever comes out of that loop item. And you can see this dynamically starting to fill up. So let's grab my description. There is an image. And you know what we can do? I can actually add a badge, and let's add the date. This doesn't look great now, but we have something later to make that look better. Let's see. Let's do the badge style in red. Why not? Let's keep it like this for a sec. And so maybe do we want a different style? Nah, I prefer this
Yeah,
one.
too much
Of
text.
course, we are using the component starter kit we build right now. If you don't want to use that, you can build your own components in Vue or React or whatever. And all these properties are just mapped into uniform. And then you can do whatever you want with your components. So there you go. And so now we have dynamically set this up. And so I'm saving, let's just publish this thing. And then I'll just go to my local host and actually refresh. And you'll see this is now directly connected, but I haven't actually touched any code yet. So we don't have to connect all this stuff. So Richard, what do you want to do? Should we show component patterns, or should we
Yeah,
add the extra hooks we've added to clean up this date in the code?
I
Which
think that
one
let's
first?
show patterns. Let's first show patterns because they are
Okay.
super powerful. And I
Yes.
can also maybe give a quick intro what patterns are and why we introduced them. So,
Yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about what these patterns are, while I'll
mhm.
surely show on the screen what that actually means.
So patterns already existed in Uniform in a different kind of context before we introduced these new kind of capabilities. And the original purpose was to have reusable components that you can use on multiple pages, for example. So let's say I have a hero that I want to use on 3 or 4 pages. Um, and now we added a lot of more capabilities using the data connections and also allowing you to override certain settings. And so one of the main reasons why you would want to use patterns is, like as Tim showed you before, you kind of go from component or to component and parameter to parameter, and you have to do this mapping between the external data source and the component parameter. And not every business user would feel familiar with kind of going through an API response, going through a JSON field. And so once you so basically what we did until now works really great for developers who feel familiar by digging through JSON responses. But for your marketer, they just I want to show a blog post in a card. And that's all the context that they want to have. And so and you can do this basically with patterns. So patterns allows you to kind of take the external content, decide what component should be showing that external content, and combine that mapping there. And additionally, you can decide should any of those parameters that you have on that component be overridable by the author. So as a developer who's kind of setting this up for a non-technical user, you really have a lot of flexibility to decide what the editorial experience should be. Does it
Yeah.
make
So
sense, Sim?
yeah, it does. So I just went to, well, I can just go back to where we were before. And so we were here. And so what I decided to do is like, okay, let's grab this hero. Right now, this is the one that I connected, right? I connected all this already. So how
Yeah.
about we actually disconnect and just keep it back to what it was? So it's no longer dynamic. So let's just make this a version of a little bit of blah blah, whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? So we
Yeah.
just created this. Let's save this. So this is our default out of the box version of a hero. You can literally, if you wanted another hero, you just click hero. There you go. You can type some stuff in and it all works, right? So just quickly remove this, because what actually we want to do is, remember, we just connected to two different contentful sources. So how about we make a variation of this hero for both of those sources, and we can do that with a pattern, right? So
Hmm.
let's save this first though. Okay, we can actually go to the component definition. And interestingly, of course, you have all these props for your component. And so a pattern doesn't mean that you connect it to something externally and that's it. You make a pattern of a combination of what all these properties do. Right? So let's create a pattern that is actually hero from contentful from the Tim instance. So we are now in the pattern creator. And so here again, we have these lovely, little icons, right? So here we can say, you know what? In this case, I want no background image. So let's set this one to default, and let's select the eyebrow text from the Contentful Tim hero, and let's connect it to just the default Tim Benniks one. So now we've connected that, and you can say, you know what? Let me just grab this title. And so the idea is that developers do this so that content editors don't have to. And you can kind of say, you know what? In this context, it's going to be the header 2. And so the title is actually not correct. Let me just put that to the title and that to the chapeau, and then this to the description. And let's not add the image, and let's keep it like this. So now what we've done is we've said this instance of this hero component, this pattern, is now connected to that one specific thing. And then you can have a look at overrides, where you say, you know what? I don't have an image for this data source. I'm not going to override the variant selection of image left, image right, because we don't have that. But I might want to change which hero I'm selecting from Contentful. And I also might want to change the fact that the eyebrow text, I might want to overwrite that, and also the header, the hero, so the title style, sorry. Because I just selected a header 2, right? But maybe in another place it has to be a header 3 or a header 1. So you need to give them that for SEO visibility. So I've now, you know what, let's not do this, but just the hero style, the title style. So let's publish this one now. And what we have created is a new entity of that component. So when we actually go back to our homepage now, and we want to add another extra hero, we can do that here. Here's our original hero, and this is the Contentful Tim hero pattern that we just created. And that is by default connected, right? You see these are little locked now here. And that makes it really interesting because this one is actually overridable. So let's make this a header 1 again, because maybe here I don't want it to be a header 1. This is just 2. Don't do this, but as an example.
Yeah.
And
Boo says it's magic in the comments.
It's a little crazy, isn't it? And what is so lovely about this is we set the override to whatever we want to select from Contentful. So you might actually want to say replace. And I don't want to have this. I want to, I want the one from my, let's see, video creator. That's the one that I want. And now you can see there's no eyebrow text for the video creator one, but there's a title and a subtitle. And so you can allow your content editors to say override. So this is a header 3 now, and I select which one I want. But you might actually want to do that differently and say, if you can get something back from Algolia, a very specific search result, for example, you might want to not have them override this, but dynamically let it be the best match. And so they can only say, you know what, I wanted to have it 4 or 5, or I want to have it look a certain way. And you see, now we created one version of this hero, but now let's create another one.
Yeah, maybe one other quick thing to add, where I think that this is super powerful because, like, often when you pull in data from an external source, like that paid data might have, or that content might have been created for a specific context. So maybe it has a certain image that has, let's say, it has a dark background, but in the context where you're using it, that image might not work. And with overrides, you can basically just replace that one image in that one particular scenario while keeping the original content in place, because, well, if you change that original content, you might not know the 10 other places where that image might be used. So you might kind of be introducing an error. But for that one particular change, you can locally adjust that content.
Yeah. I'll show that in a sec. Actually, I'll show that right now. So I am looking at the title, connect. Oh, no, I was looking at description, text. So for the image, there is an image field here in Contentful, file image. You see, so the image is grabbed here, and then we have the description. And so there's a few things for the CTA now that we have that looks good. But in this case, maybe this image is kind of strange for a background. So we have a few options to solve that. We either can say in the override, you know what, let's allow the variation of the component override. So image left, right, or background. Let's, in this case, not allow what the content is that you can change, but maybe we want to be able to change the image URL. So let's save this one. And so we've now created yet another type of hero that your content editor can use. So let's add another hero. And now you can see there's the CTA one we just created. And so the image is connected, but I've not set the variant because I've made it overridable. So let's just do this. And you can also set this in the pattern that it's always left, or we can say it's right. Because if this one is background, it's kind of awkward, as you can see. So what you might want to do is actually find, let's see, let's do a large image of coffee beans. Is this what we like? Nope. Normally it will open. Oh, for pixels, it just downloads it. Wait, let's grab another one. Okay, come on, Google, you can do it. Because if it hasn't loaded the big one yet, it gives you the base 64. Here we go. So I just grab this image and I can say, you know what, let's do it as background, but let's overrule this image here. So I can just say disconnect, paste my own. And there we go. And I'm not saying this is the best one. I just literally grabbed something. But it's pretty cool that you can do that, right?
Definitely.
And so it also depends on your own component library if all these options exist, of course. But what I can do is that we have now these three different ones that we've created. And you can do all that also with the loops, and basically anything goes. And you can also say, let's make a pattern of 5 of these components together, and some are connected to something and others are not, right? You can go very deep with all that stuff.
And you can have like full sections, or maybe you would have like something like a feature product or a product list section, and then you kind of decide what kind of data kind of you want to
Exactly.
move into that. That could be based on a query, like my latest 5 products, or it could be your manual selection, and especially very powerful in combination with personalization, because it is really easy to set those up. And you need no developer. It's very
Yeah,
straightforward.
and for example, this website, I built this one recently with, of course, uniform, because why not? Because that's my job. And so I did a conference talk with guitar, right? And so I needed a landing page. This page was built with my own design system, literally in 1 minute, because I just knew I have a few things that I need to connect. Images, Cloudinary. This is just text from uniform. These are actually a playlist that I select from YouTube. That is just a
I think
data
Tim,
source.
sorry, Tim, you need to share your screen. I'm
Oh,
not
I'm
seeing
not sharing
anything.
my screen. How about that?
No worry.
I'll go back and say it all again. So I do a conference talk where I play guitar and I use all this composable stuff. And so I needed a landing page. And so this is my design system. So I have a hero as well. And I have a two column component. And this image comes from Cloudinary as a source. And this is a playlist of videos about my conference talk that I just grabbed from YouTube with a data type. These talks actually come from Contentful. And you can see how easy it becomes to build this stuff. And I can literally make another page now that looks the same. And like, this is just another data source that looks at all my live streams or all my dev.to stuff. So anyways, I wanted to show you another thing that makes this so fancy and so easy to use. So what should we do? Do we go down and dirty and code something? I think
Yeah,
so,
let's do that.
right?
Yeah.
Because this is the thing. Sometimes the data that you get back from your API, even if you select it in uniform, you might not exactly like it. A great example would be rich text from a CMS is generally JSON bound, is JSON based. And then they have an SDK to make it from JSON to HTML. Or, for example, when I share my screen again and we go back to here, where we have this lovely list of my blog posts, but this date comes just out as a normal like Node.js date object to string. This is not exactly what you want to put on here, right?
No, not really.
So what we've added on top of this edge hanger thing that we built, here, this one, that automatically works. We've also added the ability to hook into that. And then before it goes to your component, we can actually add enhancers of your own if you wanted to. And you can do a whole bunch of fun stuff with that. Because you can literally just, for any component, add a dad joke to all the props, or map this date into something that's actually readable, or whatever you want, right? So you can even do checks. Is this image even allowed to be on the internet? Let me do a quick check, and then render it or not render, whatever you want. And so let's have a quick look at this code. This is literally the starter kit that comes out of the box with Uniform. And I have to be honest, I don't even know if this has the enhancers in it set up by default. Do you know, Richard?
I'm not sure myself.
I don't think it does.
Okay, then we have to do a little bit more coding.
Yep, that's part of the game. I kind of like that.
Yep.
Because we have lovely new documentation, and also we have a bunch of cool people in the stream that can definitely help us here. Oh, and look, this is nice. Component template is a killer feature. Yes, it is. We think so too. Thank you, Booba. I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
So let's actually just, yeah, I know this code base is relatively light because it's the out of the box starter kit. Should we just go to the docs, find enhancers, put it in? And if that takes too long, we'll do it in another stream where we go down and dirty, because there's a bunch of other things we actually also want to show you by adding super cool live data without writing one line of code. But that comes after. Let's first do the enhancer business. Okay, I'll share my screen again. I'll just go to the Uniform documentation. Enhancers. So let's see if here, this is of course explaining everything you can do. So you can literally say for this component type, add a bunch of parameters and do whatever you need to do with that. What I kind of want to do is figure out how I can do that best in a React application that we have running right now. So is there a starter with all of it in? I don't think so. What do you think, Richard, is the best approach to start this?
We probably would need either a data or parameter enhancer.
Yeah, exactly. So what I can do actually is go to GitHub, to my own website, and just quickly grab the code that I'm using.
Yeah.
Just for speed purposes. And actually, it kind of makes sense that there are no enhancers in this starter kit, because normally you shouldn't have to use them per se. So I think I'm doing it here. Let's see. I love this in the stream because we're literally just finding it out from here. I'm not even sure if I'm enhancing in my website because it works so well.
Oh, there you go, line 7. You have import. No, the previous file that you had open.
Yeah, here we go. So we have an answer function that I created here. So let's see, lib uniform enhancers. So we kind of need to, oh, you can see I added it in, but I'm actually not enhancing because it wasn't actually really necessary anymore. Because the more we've added with this lovely new mesh feature functionalities is that you can kind of curate your own output. So you don't have to do much, but we can still grab this, right? Let's see. Should we just do this?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see if we actually have this package at all. Oh, it looks like we actually went so far back to simplicity that we don't even need these packages. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, big kudos to the whole engineering team at Uniform. Like they made huge changes in the test experience. Like it got so simple.
Yeah, it's almost ridiculous now. Okay, so we don't need the Cloudinary one. Okay, so let's see how I get to this run enhancers while this is installing. Oh, it's already installed. Okay. noise.
Elias is also saying in the chat that for this specific case, we could also just do that in a component, which is true. Like we could do the date formatting in the component itself.
Yeah, this is true. Like, because a date is a date, essentially. So it's relatively simple. So you know what? I might make the executive decision to not do it in the stream because it's already we're an hour in, and we kind of want to show some other fun stuff
Yeah.
that might not need this enhancer. So what we can say about enhancers is that every component that you have, for each component type, you have a hook that's called an enhancer that you can run in your local code or on some microservice that you put on a serverless function somewhere that can then say, for this component, the data is this, or for this property, change the data into that. And then you literally just modify whatever data comes in from Uniform SDK or from the Uniform API. You change it on your end, and then you push it to your components. So it's still a separated bit. And in my case, when I did this before, when we relied more on enhancers, I put that on a separate serverless function. So I could still actually change it and go from Vue to React, and it still worked. So hereby, executive decision made. Let's not go into it because I
Okay,
didn't
that's
realize how
fine.
little we have in this starter kit. And then it could work, right? It's fine. It's just a bit of coding. You just see me stumble on my keyboard.
Yeah, it's like a one-time setup that you have to do if you're adding enhancers, and like usually you wouldn't need them. It's really like for the kind of the final data massaging bit that you
Yeah,
sometimes need.
exactly. All right. Anyways, Richard, tell us your idea for the extra fancy bit that we wanted to do.
So my idea was that we're adding live weather for like a city and kind of show a weather card using Tailwind. And so basically the idea is we create a new component from scratch. The only coding that we're basically doing is creating that component so that it's available. And then we're gonna use Mesh to kind of pull in that weather data and connect it to that component.
All right, let's do it. What do we do first? Add the data source?
Let's do first, let's grab the data first. So let's maybe go to what's it called? Open Weather Map API, I think.
Yeah, okay. So
And if you need an API key, I can also search for
you
one
know
in the
what? You
background.
have one, right?
Yeah, I have one, so I'm
Just
gonna
put it in
just
the
send
chat.
it.
I'll put it in so I don't have to make a whole account.
Yeah, let me do that. Give me a
Okay, so
second.
let's go back to Uniform and actually add a new data type for this open weather map.
Give me a second.
Yeah, sure. Oh, and I might want ask you to give me the URL and the query parameters as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll go off the screen for a sec so you don't see his API key, which is important.
So this is
Yeah, so the idea is, like, while Richard is getting this for me, is that we're going to add this data type that has the weather base for a certain city, for example. Okay, so I'm just getting this from Richard here. And so it gets that data back, and then we're going to add it to a component through Uniform based on its props. And that should be relatively easy to do.
wait a second. Nearly got
Okay,
the
so I have my
API
base
key.
URL here.
Okay, and then
Yep.
you need and it's a get parameter called app ID. Can also put that in our little side chat
Okay.
here.
Thank you.
So that's the data source.
Okay, so this API key I have now, how do I add it in? Where do I add it?
Yeah, so here you put app ID.
Like this?
And yeah, and on the value you put that API key.
This one?
Yeah, it's fine. Like I can delete it after the stream
Yeah,
if it really
we're
wants.
just gonna delete it. We did all the due diligence. Do you give it to my private ID? And then now I'm sharing it anyways. That's it. We don't need anything else?
So that's the data source. Now next we need to create, so save that. Next we create the data type, so the concrete query.
By the way, this is cool. Right now it shows this as secret because we added it in the source rather than in the type. Oh, and that's a get, so that's okay then. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a get. And then you create a data type from in the next
Yeah,
step.
I have the data type. Yeah, and then what?
Okay, so that's I sent you the API endpoint.
Yeah.
And let me quickly open that on the side. Then add one variable called city.
Okay, so it's a weather type. Sure. Okay, so it's slash weather. And we add a
Yeah,
city parameter.
variable. Yeah,
Oh, sorry, variable. Yeah, I need to
yeah,
use the right
yeah.
name. It's important.
And then under query params, you have units in plural,
Units, and what should it be?
and metric as a static value. So we want to have Celsius and not Fahrenheit,
Oh yeah, we're
which
just
is
gonna go metric because we're Europeans.
and
Next time we'll
then
do freedom values.
yeah, and instead of city as the query param, call it Q, the query.
Just Q.
Okay, yeah, that should be it. And so put in something like, so test it and see if we put in something like Paris or Berlin and see if we get any data.
There we go. You see how fast that was? That's crazy. I love it. So we have wind, clouds, all the cool things. I like it. All right. So now we have all this data in uniform. So let's actually make a component. Let's call it a weather card. Okay. So what? Well, before we know what parameters we need, we kind of need to know a weather card
Let's
on its
build,
own.
yeah, let's maybe build a component first and then we kind of define it later from there.
I'm just going to go crazy and click this. Is
Yeah,
this
this one
something you
looks good.
like, or did you want something
Yeah,
else?
no, it looks good. Simple enough. We can tweak it later.
Yeah, we can always tweak a little bit because we probably need some icon or something, but the time is literally flying. We're an hour and 6 minutes in. So let's see how far we can get. All right, so we need a new component. I think we put it in Canvas, yes. Yeah, of course, I just pasted this in. I don't think that's correct. But what we can do is just look at one of the simpler components and just grab it. So we need to grab some props. Of course, for that, we need to import whatever that type is.
Yeah.
We need this one. We need this one. We don't need this for this one. Okay. We don't have a variant. There's lots of stuff going on here. Yes, this is what we need.
Yeah.
Welcome to a few person writing React. I actually enjoy it, to be fair. I actually really like it.
I like both. I don't enjoy TypeScript, but it's just because I'm not an engineer anymore. For me, it's just I'm old school.
Okay, so these are those props, right? So let's have a look in a second what these props need to be, and we need to not do it like this yet. Okay, so just clean that up a little bit. All right, so this is now the function that needs to, I guess, return like that, and the HTML goes in there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All the React developers in the stream are face palming how this Vue.js dude does this, but it will work, I promise. Why is this complaining? Maybe because, yeah, probably because of all the flaws.
Class name. You have to maybe when you copied the markup, maybe there's also a GSX version. So
Oh, is there? No, it
I'm
doesn't
not
look
sure.
like it.
No,
Oh,
okay.
there's just HTML.
Oh,
It's just fine. It's fine. Okay, wait. We can solve this. Oh, class name is everywhere already, except.
Khaled is saying React is basically copy and paste from other projects. Yes, right, Khaled.
Okay, so it is really complaining though. Okay.
Do you have the last bracket? Do you have to export default something?
Yeah, I need to. Well, of course, it needs types. Maybe that's where it's complaining.
It needs types and it needs export for the hero, but I guess like that's not it.
Ah, yes. Let's see if this one has that also. Oh, let's just grab this stuff.
Yeah, the last line. Yeah.
We don't need all this stuff though.
We
just
just
need to
need to
go.
register.
Oh wait,
Like
it
get
can be
rid of.
even easier.
Yeah, just keep it simple.
But we don't need variants, and the component
No.
needs to be.
Will card this up
Oh, and I
against.
think
Yeah.
it's even still called hero here. Okay, so it's getting closer now. So why does it not like this?
FC missing import.
Yeah, maybe.
Functional component something.
Oh, yeah.
There.
But we don't need use memo. Okay, so we have a few things. Let's set up some types. I just want to see if there's any comments about me doing crazy stuff. Let's see.
This looks good.
Okay, it's basically exactly like Khaled. It's just copy paste. Alrighty then. Okay, back at it. All right, so let's have a look at that design though. And then we can
let's
see.
figure
Okay, what do
out
we have here? This is the city.
Location or the city location. Yeah.
Wind, humidity,
The temperature and
temperature
some
and time. So let's see in our data type, if we get back all that stuff. So I do want to save this, otherwise we lose it. Let's first have a look at that data type. Weather, test. Oh.
So
okay,
going to the weather, few clouds.
So we can use the description for few clouds. Does it have something like that in here? Doesn't really look like it.
No, but we could use that instead of the icon, or like there is a hack on the API to get an icon from the source, but I'm not sure if we have the time to do that.
No, we don't, for sure. Anyways, we can use the temperature here.
Yeah, we got to round it off, but that's something we can do in the front-end component.
Exactly, but look, this is looking, yeah, we can do the rounding locally. Okay, so we have temperature, we have humidity, we have wind speed, and we need, I think, so we're very close. So let's just add some props that we see. So we have city. Oh, do we get that city actually, this location?
Yeah, that's somewhere all the way down there. If we go further down here.
Oh, here, name. Okay, perfect. Let's go back to that component, the weather card, and let's add some fields. So, let's call it location. Okay, what else do we have?
Temperature.
So as you can see, we're just literally just thinking about whatever props we want, and then we add these in the code as well. Of course, if you have a design system yourself, you do that the other way around.
Yeah. Could even turn it into a number, but probably
I don't know if that comes out of the API like that. Let's keep it like this is poorly typed for now. What else do we have? Humidity.
Humidity.
Okay, we have temperature, wind, humidity, and location. Wind, humidity, temperature, location. I think we're good with this for now, right?
Yeah, we can
kill just the to time show. Exactly. Do we need to allow it in a slot, or is it already allowed?
Yeah, probably we have to.
Just put it in page content to be safe. All right, so we now have created the 4 properties that we need. So let's also put these in our code. So our props are I think we have to do it like this.
I think so, yeah. Like I said, I'm not a TypeScript expert. Yeah, you should just do that part.
Yeah, so it's just never used now. So location is this a bad boy. I guess it's supposed to be like this. I'm not sure if the React people will like me doing this, but for now, I'm good. Okay, so this was the
Keep it dirty.
location. Sorry?
Keep it raw and dirty for now. Just get something out there.
Raw and dirty, exactly. Wind.
And maybe give it a masked round.
Yeah, we do that after.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
Nope. And then here we have temperature. Of course, this is not the greatest code, let's be honest, but it's
No,
fine.
definitely not.
It's just to show that the only thing that's now relatively connected to uniform is the fact that we register it in uniform. The thing is, you don't have to do this in this component. You can also just import it elsewhere and then register all of them in one file. Plus that the props come from component props. That's a type in uniform canvas. But the rest has no idea about uniform, doesn't need to know. Right, so this weather card is now a thing. And have we called this correctly? I think so. Okay,
I
so
think, yeah, double checked.
yeah, these namings need to combine properly. So now we should be able to add our weather card. There it is. Oh, somehow something is not happy with me because it's not
Yes.
running. I really enjoy living on the edge in a live stream and just trying it. There it goes. Okay, so somehow it doesn't actually know weather card.
Yeah, Khaled just wrote, we need to import it somewhere.
Where?
Uh, I think
Well,
that
we
we
have
have.
registered it, right?
Yeah, but you. Wait a minute.
It could be that
Can you
probably
open the
here.
page too?
Yeah, this is it. This is
Yeah,
it.
classic mistake.
Oh yeah, this is normal stuff, man. This is always part of the game. All right. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we now see that all the things are actually there, but they're just empty, right? And of course, we didn't do exactly defensive coding. Let's be fair, but the idea is there. So we can literally just go and say, let's add a new source to this composition. That source is the weather, and the city is Berlin. So now we can actually say, okay, what we were looking at, location, that was set to name, right? Yep, Berlin. There it comes. There's it. There it is. Temperature. I think that was here.
Yeah,
Hey, that's
that's
interesting. I
fine.
cannot select it.
Ah, because it's a number, so we have some type safety there.
Oh, okay, good to know. Let's see if the others will work. Wind, also number. Okay, humidity probably as well. Okay, so we can solve that. So we should have done it
The
a
proper
little
way.
bit better. Little bit better. The
Yeah, you
type.
cannot change it.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
you have to delete it and recreate it.
Ah, that's
Sadly,
fine.
we cannot change.
Luckily, it's not that many.
No,
As always, I should have just listened to you. I think it's
decimal.
not an int, but a decimal.
Yeah,
I think it's 2. Yeah. Okay, so this should be
yeah.
okay. Nope. Okay. Did we solve it? I think we did.
Fingers
Let's try
crossed.
again. I didn't hit. Oh, I did hit save. Okay. Okay, so let's see if temperature can now be connected. Yes.
Here we go.
Wind. We're going to do speed, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for now, let's keep it like this for a sec, because I think I actually, oh, I need to push this to Git. So actually my Vercel updates this. So let's do that now. This is the perfect commit message for a live stream. Okay, it's building now. Would be nice if it worked, right? I have not tested this.
Yeah.
But
Fingers
again,
crossed.
we're living on the edge in the live stream because we're developers. And the beauty is, if this works, that data from the weather is kind of sourced for 30 seconds on our CDN edge. Okay, so it doesn't like something with TypeScript here. Let's have a look. Oh, wait, did I add something for the enhancers that destroyed this? No.
Like it's complaining their client, that line before.
It's not assignable to. Oh, do not know what this is. I'm so sorry. It did run before, but we have updated a few times since I set this up on Vercel. It could be. This might be due to version mismatches. Do we have anyone in our chat that can help us with that? No. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's do a run build locally and see if we can solve it. All right. So it's looking at it.
Yeah. Until right, we might have two canvas versions in npm modules.
This is what I was thinking, because it's kind of like we just did a quick update. Oh, this is it. We just released 13 today. And when I installed this, literally a while back, as in an hour or two ago, it was still 12. So if I now go here and solve it like this, we should be fine. This is so awesome about daily releases. An hour later, a version number can change. It's insane. But also, it's not like it's broken. I just need to come on with the version. Okay, I'll just do it by hand. All the 19.12 ones need to go to 1913, I think. Do we have any other?
Looks good.
Oh yeah, here, this one.
Oh.
Actually, I just added that canvas package to do the enhancer. So if we didn't do that, it
Yeah.
would have been fine. I feel like I'm being judged on my commit messages, but this is live streams. We're good. Vercel again. So time is flying and we're running out. So let's see if this works. And if it does, we're happy campers. And if it doesn't, we'll do it another time. Because
Exactly.
we have actually decided to do a lot more live streams about our product itself, to talk about these things. And then people can actually come in that use it, that have specific questions. And then we figure it out together. And the lovely thing is that we have all our colleagues in the stream to help us out, which is super, super cool. It looks like it's working, by the way. I thought Rust was really, really fast. What's happening? Could be, it's not my internet, right? No. Oh, it's generating static pages. Oh, interesting. I don't think this is breaking, because
No, that's not
essentially
breaking.
what I did is, like, one of my components just doesn't have the eyebrow text. So it actually now made it an SSG, essentially. This is why it's
Mhm.
taking a bit longer. This is just how the setup is, because this could also just be server. And there we go. And so what you see now, this stuff comes from the uniform CDN. This stuff as well. This is just dynamic. This is just statically added in uniform. This one is the contentful from uniform. This one is contentful from me. And there you go. And now we have this page. Oh, and these are my blog posts.
Yeah,
Cool, right?
I think it's pretty amazing. And like the speed that you also see, like when loading the page, that's really mind
Well,
blowing.
of course, this is an SSG page now. So it's so fast that if I
Yeah,
hit refresh, it's like literally the same. But you
that's
can
true.
also set it up differently. So it's not an SSG page, and then the speed is basically the same, which is pretty crazy, isn't it? Anyways, time flew by. We made a bunch of mistakes. They made me happy
Yeah.
because we fixed them, or we made executive decisions. It is what it is. Thank you for your time. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them now. Or if you got excited and you actually want to try it out and you don't have direct connections to either Richard or me or Uniform, you can actually go here to uniform.dev/try, and you will get a form field that you fill out with your work email. That's important to put your work email in. And then it literally just comes to me or to our CTO, Alex. And then either Alex or I or both of us will reach out to you. And then we'll just give you a little bit more of a good demo rather than this clumsy stuff where we just literally tried stuff because why not? But we'll give you the story of why and then the how. So, and then afterwards we set up a sandbox for you and you just get run and do fun stuff. So, do you have any last words for us, Richard?
Not really. Like I really enjoyed the session. I think we
Yeah,
got done
me
what we
too.
wanted to do. So yeah.
Exactly.
So if
And
anyone wants to reach out to me, has any further questions, feel free. Like my Twitter handle is at Richard Bausek.
oh yeah,
And
let me just
yeah.
remove this so we can
Mhm.
everybody can see. Let me just remove the banner, and then you can see in our names here on the side. So you can reach out on
Exactly.
Twitter. You can also go to our Discord if you want to. Let me put that in. Oh, typing. Typing is always a thing. Right, here we go. So you can also go to Discord and then ask us any question that you want. And we're all on there. Like there's the whole uniform team there. So whatever question you have, we have people that help. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. And I know this was a long one, but imagine if we hadn't explained anything and just started building, we would have been done in like 10 minutes, maybe 15, if you didn't look at my terrible typing, right? So you can do all these things without much code and without much connections because it all lives in uniform and on the CDN. So I'm really excited about this stuff. All right, that's it. Cheers, everyone.
Okay. Thank you,
Feel
everyone.
free to reach out to us and then we'll talk. Bye.